Welcome to our podcast, Evolving Educators. My name is Donda Sladen, and I'm a new Caney ISD campus administrator. And this is my friend Chris.
Glad to be back on this podcast.
Yes. So, Chris, next week, we're going to do our fourth face-to-face Evolving Educators, our Aspiring Administrator Academy face-to-face program. And we're excited to do that. It's going to be mock interviews.
Oh, I remember that one from when I was an aspiring administrator, and it was so impactful.
Yes.
I actually had Miss Heine and Jonathan Powell at my table, and the feedback that they gave on my interview skills and my resume was very helpfple for me.
It's amazing. It's we're going to be set up kind of like speed dating. So they'll go from station to station, and they'll get to speak with all, principals from New Caney ISD and let them know, how to best present themselves to a committee.
That's going to be super powerful for them.
We're very excited about that. You're not going to believe our next guest. So we've been taking up her space for our podcast. And, it's a great vibe on this campus. But we are excited to welcome Principal Heine to for our Evolving Educators podcast. Some fun facts about her, though.
Okay.
So, first of all, she was my son's tech apps teacher.
Wow.
At New Caney High School. She was a collegiate softball player. Okay. She's a New Caney High School graduate. And the best fun fact, maybe of anybody that we're possibly going to get, she is the only principal and quite possibly could be the only person who has 3 children who will have graduated from all 3 comprehensive high schools at New Caney ISD. She had her oldest daughter was a New Caney High School graduate. Okay. Her middle daughter was with me at Porter High School. Okay. And now she has her youngest daughter is here at West Fork with her.
She's over here on the green side.
Yes. Okay, so that is so fun.
That's so unique.
Yes. And what a legacy.
Yeah.
What a legacy. So, and now she serves as the principal of West Fork Gators, and she's a very well-respected leader, Chris. And we're so excited to have her on our program. Principal Bridgett Heine. Welcome, Principal Heine. We're so glad that you've joined us today, and thank you so much again. We've been here a couple of times for some episodes, and this space just has a great vibe. And so every time we're here, we just love the vibe and the culture of this campus, don't we, Chris?
Absolutely. West Fork is such a beautiful campus, and the staff and the kids, there's just such a good climate and culture at this school.
Yes, and walking in and seeing all the students, it's just a great vibe. We love being here, so thank you for having us.
Of course.
So, let's just jump right in, Principal Heine. Let's talk about, you've been a principal at a couple of places, and so just tell me what jumps out at you when I ask you, what are the most important skills a principal needs to be successful?
Yeah. Well, I think it's selecting the right people to be in the correct roles. Ms. Sladen, your building will reflect the values according to the people that you select. Your building will become the people that you hire. I believe that firmly.
I can tell right away, Ms. Heine, the culture of the place, it's really a great vibe here.
Yeah. And I think just, to kind of add on to that, it's really about those qualities in those people that you appreciate. They need to be trustworthy. They need to show grace in what we do each and every day within public education. We have to understand that we are taking teachers and students on their own journey of learning and self-discovery, because who they are now is not who they're going to be a year from now or 5 years from now. And so it is so much about the people.
And isn't it true, even from, when you think about now that you've been at Woodridge, isn't it so much from the 6th to the 12th grade? I mean, you're almost to the 12th grade. You are going to add 11th graders, but you've been at New Caney High School. So isn't it amazing, the swan that they become by the 12th grade?
Yes, to see their growth and development, of course, academically. But as you know, we were just watching some students walk through that just came back that were on cloud 9 because of a success that they just had based on their experience. And so, yes, seeing that continued growth.
That's exactly right. And Chris, I mean, that goes back to what you just said, though, that the teacher, the people that you put on the right bus and the right seat. So just talk to me a little bit about, because it sounds like that building the right team is really important. So talk to me about how you go about choosing those people and how do you know what seat to put them on?
Well, I think it starts with knowing your core beliefs and what your strengths are as a leader. And then looking for those people to kind of fill the space in those areas where you yourself, it may not be a strength, but it's somebody else's strength.
Yes. I know when you first started here, Miss Heine, you talked a lot about building culture and climate, and in that it was a year-to-year thing. You started off with freshmen. What are just some of the first things you did, though, with those key team members to start building that culture and climate that you speak of that's so important?
A few years ago, I had the unique opportunity to hear a speaker, and she said something that stuck with me. She says, always look for the good. And I think when you are approaching each situation or each person, looking for the good and for their strengths, that if I can do that in my staff, then my teachers are then looking for the good in their students.
Oh, that's a great point. It reminds me of just even some things that we shared from Woodridge to Porter High School. We're always looking for the good in people and assuming that they want to do the right thing. This is the hardest job ever, Chris. Who signs on to be a teacher and says, hey, I don't want to do good for people, right? And so when you say looking for the good, it really is that mindset of assuming they're there to do the right thing. I love that.
Absolutely.
Talk to us about how you cultivate that culture of respect within your school community.
Yeah, and I think I want to, of course, moving on to that, but I also think that the thing as we're talking about that cultivating that learning community is learning is just as much about failure as it is success. And so having a safe place for teachers to come and say, that didn't go well. And that starts with being able to come to people on the leadership team, come there to their team leads or their department leads to be vulnerable and say, I need support with this, or is there something that you could suggest for me? And so understanding, like I said, when we start, everybody is on their different path and their different journey. And so that vulnerability is really important.
Bridgett, I still come back to, because this is just glaring at me, Chris, it still comes back to she has the right people on the right seat, on the right bus.
Yep.
And then it does come from the top, though, from the leader, giving that culture,
Everybody
climate,
has to be
vision.
Comfortable to go and tell someone, hey, I need a little bit of guidance in this, and be humble about it.
That's right.
Because we're all here to improve together.
That's right. Well, and not being afraid of the leader.
Right.
That the leader, there may be some repercussion from that.
Right.
And I just think that the other thing that's so important when we're talking about building leadership teams, creating a climate that's positive and people want to be there, starts with communicating and being clear in your communication and clear in your expectations.
Yes, I would agree with that. What are some ways, speaking about communication, that is so important. So what are some ways we could look to for the aspiring leader? What are some good kind of rules for communication to your staff?
First and foremost, be clear. And I think each and every single time, if people know the expectation, they rise to the expectation or they strive to reach that to the best of their ability.
So I hear you saying be clear and provide clarity and on point.
Absolutely. Yes. And Ms. Layden, I will just tell you the other thing is you want to maintain trust. I've always held close to the thought or believe strongly that you have to make sure that you're not talking about staff negatively.
Yes. And sometimes you may have the best intent. You have to be so mindful of that because sometimes you have the best intentions and then something just comes right out.
Sure.
But it goes back to sometimes you do have to say things in an instructional team, but then that's the trust, right? And then the right people on your leadership team.
Absolutely. And how you frame those conversations, because you want to make sure that you're clearly talking about things or observations that you've made and not something that is personal about that person. And I believe that is the key piece that allows you to build that trust.
Could you elaborate on how you balance being visible and being present in your role as a school leader. How do you stay connected, and still make sure that culture and climate is, on point and ready to go?
I'm sure you may have a quote about, being present, Miss Sladen, but there's a difference. There are days when I'm walking through and I am just kind of getting a check of what's going on, kind of the state of instruction. And I think leaders need to be aware of that. What is the state of instruction in this building? And that's anybody on the ILT team or in any leadership role. But then I think the other part of that is you're present to have those conversations and to listen to the great people that you've hired. And so that being present is to listen to those obstacles or those most pressing things.
Yes. Whenever the people, because we know teachers love to see us. And by being in and out of those classrooms, it does show teachers that we are interested and that we care. And, it reminds me of something Miss Coronado said last time, Chris. It's balancing those leadership responsibilities with the managerial responsibilities.
It could be the smallest thing. We could have a quick answer to a question when a team is trying to just decide something, and that may be their obstacle to moving forward. And so we want to make sure that we are, and someone from the leadership team, that you've got a resource that if they need an answer, they can come and get that answer. And so that's the present piece that I'm talking about.
Absolutely. I can't tell you how many times I was in an ILT meeting or some kind of a teacher meeting, and because I was there, I was able to get the questions answered right away. I mean, we can't go to everyone, but the teachers really like it when we're there. And even at the end, there may be a topic that had nothing to do with the PLC, right? But we're ending up and we're wrapping up. Oh, Sladen, I just wanted to ask you this one thing. And so that provides, it's really a safe space.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So I love that.
And it allows for instruction to go on. We're there, and even if it's not me, if it's an instructional coach or an administrator that's in that meeting, we can be timely and get the information that we need. So, and the other thing that I think is so important when we're talking about specifically the present and being present is to be willing to celebrate even the smallest accomplishments. When we're talking, that culture and climate, but when you walk into a team and you can celebrate something that you observed in the classroom or an instructional strategy that was just presented, or what you heard a kid say that really showed that they have a great understanding of what was just taught.
Absolutely. What I love the simplistic principle, Heine, because it's easy, it's easy to celebrate the big things. They do happen all the time. However, when we show people that simple is how we get to the mountaintop, we don't just start off there. It's celebrating those small wins where we get students to collaborate when they hadn't before. We're able to have strategies and things that we taught them in a PLC. And then we go to a room and suddenly we see that is taking that one step at a time towards greatness. So I love celebrating the small things. Those are the most important.
It really reinforces the teachers. Whenever you come in and you're like, hey, we talked about this in PLC, you tried that strategy and it worked. That kid never talks in class and you got him to talk and give a very academically sound answer. Like, that was so impressive. Here's a shout out.
Absolutely.
And those little shout outs or like a little note when you're leaving the class on a sticky, that can really make a teacher's, not only like their day, but their week.
Oh, that trumps a gene pass any day, doesn't it, Chris?
Absolutely. Yeah, that positive reinforcement is so impactful.
Yes. Well, when you're doing work like this, Miss Heine, this is a service calling industry job. And so when you're doing those things, it does feel good to the teacher when the leader recognizes those small things because they're there to make a difference.
Donda, you're validating their work.
Absolutely.
When you are there and you're present in the planning, even if you're not staying the entire planning period, you're validating the work. And then when you go and you're doing a visit in a classroom, you further validate that through feedback, through walkthroughs. And so I think it's just so important.
Yes. And good instruction, you can give feedback across any content. I don't have to know I don't have to know the physics teaks.
That's right.
To be able to affirm and recognize.
Were the kids engaged? Like, was everybody awake? Like, was everybody trying their best or having fun?
That goes back to one of my first comments that we talked about.
Right.
Find the good.
Absolutely.
When you walk in the classroom, what do you see that's good? Because sometimes it's easy to go to the things that are wrong, but finding what's working well and using that as a platform and a starting point for whatever else needs to happen.
Right. Time to be in class, otherwise you're tardy.
That's right. Well, that's actually a springboard, though, to your culture and climate.
Absolutely.
Yes. And so when you're able to have those small victories, and that just grows your culture and climate of your campus.
Absolutely.
Speaking of instruction, though, Miss Heine, what do you have for an aspiring leader that they could focus on one thing for improving teaching and learning? I mean, you've said a lot of great things, but what is one thing we could say to the brand new principal to focus on teaching and learning for growth?
Donna, I'm glad you're asking this question because I think you and I have something in common. I think we both attended the Principal Institute.
We did.
And during that time, you had to create a bucket list, and one of those was to create a learning organization. So I'm just telling you that was one of my things that I walked away from there. And so we have to make teaching and learning for every single person on this campus a continual focus. That's my continued growth. That's our administrators. And so never pass an opportunity. We expect teachers to make thinking visible in the classroom.
Yes.
And so we have a responsibility as leaders to make our thinking visible to future leaders.
Super powerful.
Oh, that's
really
awesome.
Powerful.
Yes.
So how do you know what you know, Donda? You know it from your years of experience, but it's through those experiences that you're sharing with your leadership team what the steps are that you follow, because you kind of know the why already.
Yes.
And so just knowing that we're on different journeys and wanting to develop each person and give them one more skill. When we're talking about whatever it might be, if I can just give them one more skill, I think that is really what supports the whole idea or principle behind a teaching and learning organization.
That's amazing.
Yeah, it really is.
Wow. So I love that. You made me think of when we're at the Aspiring Administrators Academy face-to-face, what I like to do is walk around and listen to the conversations. And then when I hear something, I like to, I may be able to add something to that. And so I will just stand at a table, Chris, and we all do that, but stand at a table and listen for something that I could add to help them grow their skill set.
Yeah, and I think that's super important.
And I think just focusing on one thing at a time overall improves teaching and learning. And that could be in a content level, that could be in a grade level team. What is the overarching need? And let's focus on that one thing and let's do it really well.
I love that because, we're only here. I tell my teachers all the time, we have about 180 opportunities with the kids. And so we cannot do everything. And so, however, when you do set those goals, making sure that they're in the forefront and that you don't let the day-to-day things take you off track.
And if you're not going back to those goals and keeping the most important thing,
Yes.
Then yes, you could easily get sidetracked and get off track.
I love that. Okay. Well, Chris, this was great insight from Principal Heine for our aspiring leaders.
Yeah, I'm so glad we finally got you on the show.
We've
been borrowing your campus this whole time, and now we finally got you.
It was very insightful discussion. And also, Principal Heine, I do want to thank you so much for serving on our Aspiring Administrator Academy committee. And
it's one of my favorite things to do.
It's awesome.
Yes.
This is my first year, and oh man, I don't know how I'm so glad to be a part of it. So we like to, one of the things, my friend here likes his Starbucks. So could you give us, just a little espresso for the sake? Could you leave us with a fun quote?
I love it. One of the things you've heard me talk a little bit about little things. And so Ray Lewis said this: a lot of small things done well, day after day, will lead you to greatness.
Small things lead to great things. To summarize that, Miss Heine.
Yes, that's absolutely right.
Yes, that was amazing. Thank you so much for coming.
Thank y'all. This was fun.
Yeah. Well, when we come back from our break, we're going to be having our exit ticket section, and we can't wait to answer a few questions.
Sounds good.
All right, so now it's time for our exit ticket section. And today we have a great question from one of your Gators, Miss Heine. Tanya Hopkins wants to know, regarding balance, how do you navigate your prioritization and delegation and schedule when it comes to your numerous job responsibilities and expectations?
Prioritization starts with going back to your goals. And for West Fork and for anyone, is it safe? And then two, does it focus on learning? I think those are the first two things. So as you're looking at your list of things, make those things the most important. Delegation, who on your team? If I can't do it, or I can't get to it, right. Who on your team can continue and carry out this task to the level that you expect it to be carried out to?
Right.
Yes, I agree with you, Bridgett. And just to come back to the secret little formula, you always have to bring it back. Is it good for kids? And is it aligned with the goal? Mm-hmm. And make sure that you're asking those questions really daily, Chris. Yeah. And so, Tanya, we would just say, the secret formula really is at the beginning, you need a goal, and you need to make sure that those decisions are aligning with that goal and good for students.
Absolutely. Great question.
Yeah, that is a really good question, Tanya. Thank you so much for asking it. And you know what? I think every principal that we've had on the show so far has somehow addressed this a little bit. Like Mr. Carr talked about knowing your why. Ms. Coronado talked about time management. And now you're really going by like a two thing. Like, is it safe? Does it align with the instructional goals of West Fork? Like,
that's
all these things
clear.
kind of mesh together to build a good campus. And I'm so glad to have all of you principals here at New Caney ISD, really helping make an impact with students.
Yes, that was great. Well, Chris, this was a great show.
It sure was.
And Principal Heine is another great example of a New Caney ISD leader. Thank you again so much.
Thank you so much for joining us today.
Of course.